Well, another week has gone by, which means another witness for the Republican Party's investigations into both Hunter Biden and Joseph Biden has once again undermined their entire case. It is now effectively happening like clockwork, where every week Republicans have another little closed-door hearing. They bring in an alleged star witness who tells them the same thing that the other star witnesses had previously said, which is that we don't know of any involvement of President Biden in his son Hunter's business at all, ever, for any reason. All of the things that you want me to say, I cannot say because those would be lies. That is effectively what every single witness has now told them, including Karen Tramontano, who is the CEO of Blue Star Strategies, who actually did work for Burisma, where Hunter Biden was, on the board, made all that money. Republicans pissed off he made all that money. And Republicans in this hearing on Monday, again, closed doors, so we only have snippets from reports. They were trying to get Ms. Tremontero to tell them that not only did President Biden, then Vice President Biden, get involved with the son's business deals, but that Burisma bribed President Biden to actually change U.S. policy to benefit the company. And here's what she said to that. Neither Hunter Biden nor then Vice President Joe Biden had any financial or other involvement in my firm's work with Burisma. I am also not aware of any financial arrangements or compensation to then Vice President Biden related to his son's business dealings with Burisma or otherwise. She also denied anything about any kind of bribe that Burisma had offered to President Biden. So again, like clockwork, Republicans, led of course by Jim Jordan in this particular one, James Comer and the other House Oversight investigations, get humiliated. Which is why all of this, by the way, is taking place behind closed doors. It's like when they didn't want Hunter Biden to testify publicly. Of course you don't, because he's going to make you guys all look like idiots. Not difficult to do. But if you are so hell-bent on convincing the public that President Biden was doing something illegal, wouldn't you want the public to see it? If you actually had what you call star witnesses, wouldn't you want the public to hear what these people have to say? No, you wouldn't, because you know that none of your witnesses are going to come up and validate any of your idiotic lies about what actually took place. And you know how we know that, folks? I was unaware of this, or at least it had escaped my memory, I guess. Back in 2020, Republicans, who then controlled the Senate, actually conducted an investigation into President Biden and Burisma. In fact, Mrs. Tremontero here had already testified in front of the Senate. So this is actually her second time having to testify in an identical investigation, even though the first investigation concluded, yeah, we got no evidence, let's end it. But they were really trying, because it was a presidential election year. Oh, we're going to take down the Democrat guy. And then, oops, we couldn't, because there's no evidence to back any of this up. So all of this stuff happening now with this investigation is just a rehash of what had already been concluded many years ago. But these Republicans aren't going to stop. They're going to keep doing this, and it's going to keep biting them on the behind. Every time their witnesses tell the public, Biden didn't do anything wrong. Well, folks, we have crossed that 1 million subscriber milestone, but rest assured, we are just getting started here at Ring of Fire. So if you're not already, please do subscribe to the channel and make sure to like, share, and comment on the videos.
Welcome, welcome, one and all, to The Late Show. I'm your host, Stephen Colbert. I want to thank everyone. In this brave audience right here. Everyone in this audience who braved the cold outside to come in here and be even colder, because today New York City was pummeled by a nor'easter, including a heavy dusting on the marquee at the Ed Sullivan Theater. Leading up to this storm, officials forecasted up to 8 inches of snow. Of course, as is usually the case, that 8 inches is more like a confident 5. You know what they say? You know what they... You know what they say? It's not about the depth of the snow, it's how you plow it. Thank you. Back in the day, snow used to mean no school, but not anymore, because instead in New York, students had a remote learning day. As in, the chances of learning? Remote. The early morning snowstorm, is this true? It depressed turnout in a very important special election today in New York, the race to replace George Santos. The candidates for that Long Island seat are Republican Mazi Pilip and Democrat Tom Suozzi. It's a showdown we're calling Mazi v. Suozzi, Democracy Kamikaze on Long Ozzy. The Republican, it's going to catch on. No, that's okay. Doesn't deserve that. The Republican has an unusual resume. She's a local legislator and a registered Democrat. A Republican who's a Democrat. Thanksgiving must be really hard. She gets in a fight with herself, then sneaks away from herself to get high in the garage. We don't know the results yet, right? We don't know anything because we recorded this earlier. Okay, but we do know the race was tight and the stakes are high. The GOP has this razor-thin majority in the House of Representatives, and they need all the votes they can get for their election year ambitions to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas or even President Biden. Long Islanders could decide the fate of Congress. Explains the first bill that Suozzi has promised to pass, H.R. 273, the Beatles couldn't hold Billy Joel's freaking jockstrap. Now, a lot of people are looking at this as a bellwether for the presidential election. One Republican voter described her priorities.
I supported Mazi because I think she's a little tougher on crime. And to be honest with you, that's what the whole country is afraid of, the crime. We don't care about democracy. That's already done.
We don't care about democracy? Donald Trump, I think I found your new VP. Now, that's done. Democracy's schmocracy. A lot of Democrats voted early in this election, so Republicans needed a big turnout today, which is why they hatched a brilliant plan to get voters to the polls, even in the snow.
Republicans here say if voters can't get to the polls, they have monster trucks at the ready to pick them up and get them to the polls.
Oh, yeah, this Tuesday, it's Special Election Monster Jam, live from Long Island, featuring the Enfranchiser, El Ballot Loco, and Governor Kathy Hochul-Soros. To quote the 4 words most often used to cancel vacations, there's some COVID news. We just learned that the CDC plans to drop its 5-day COVID isolation guidelines. What? No isolation? You've been telling us for years that we need to be mindful of infecting our friends and neighbors. They also announced this new CDC slogan, JK lols. One of the reasons why this is such big news is because it's the first loosening of COVID isolation recommendations since 2021, which is when they told us it was finally okay to leave our personal human hamster balls. So what do the guidelines actually say? Well, from now on, you are free to go back to your life if you're fever-free for at least 24 hours without the aid of medication and your symptoms are mild and improving. So remember, when you're riding in the elevator with Todd from accounting and he's coughing all the way to the 10th floor, it's fine as long as he was worse yesterday. There's going to be a new person. What else has changed? Is this there's going to be a new person overseeing elections for the GOP soon because reportedly Ronna McDaniel is stepping down as chair of the Republican National Committee, and Donald Trump wants to replace her with North Carolina GOP chair and co-worker who just found out there was an office Christmas party last year, Michael Whatley. But the really interesting story here is who Trump reportedly wants to make co-chair, because it's none other than his daughter-in-law and woman who thought Get Out was a rom-com, Lara Trump. Now, many folks are saying this choice reeks of corruption. And in response to her critics, Lara released this statement.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down.
Still slaps. As in, I feel like I'm being slapped. Trump said this about the endorsement. Lara is an extremely talented communicator and is dedicated to all that MAGA stands for. She has told me she wants to accept this challenge and would be great. Every penny will be used properly. Yes, it's true. Every penny will be used. Every penny. No, folks, listen up. Listen, every penny. Look, every penny will be used properly. All the folding money will be misappropriated because Daddy's got legal bills. I say, why stop with Lara? A future Trump administration could have Jared as chief of staff, Ivanka as ambassador to the UN, and Don Jr. as head of the DEA, the Drug Enjoyment Agency. Folks are still rattled by Trump's statement that he would encourage Russia to do what it wanted to our NATO allies. And I'm being told right now that Putin has pushed France out of a window. Well, now we have an update from former National Security Advisor and Colonel Sanders' brother who went to Kentucky Fried Law School, John Bolton. In an upcoming book, Bolton predicts that if Trump is elected, NATO would be in real jeopardy. I think he would try to get out. And you know he wouldn't do it to their face. He would just send NATO one of those Pizza Hut breakup pizzas. This is such a shocking idea that President Biden took a break from succumbing to entropy to express his opinion.
It's dumb, it's shameful, it's dangerous, it's un-American.
Strong words, Joe. And coincidentally, Trump's new campaign slogan. Oh, the ratings are in from the Super Bowl, and it was super. In fact, Super Bowl 58 was the most watched program ever. It's no surprise.
Wow.
No surprise, you had your football fans, plus all the folks tuning in to catch a glimpse of a global megastar. Tracker. Your glasses were on top of your head the whole time. The game was watched by 123.4 million average viewers.
Wow.
And who knows how many really hot ones. Oh, today is Mardi Gras. Today is Mardi Gras, my friends. Happy Mardi Gras. Happy Mardi Gras. Tomorrow is Ash Wednesday, the first day of Lent, which this year falls on Valentine's Day, which explains why one of the most popular gifts for Catholic lovers is an empty box with a note, "You gave up chocolate for Lent." And that is actually a budget-conscious choice this year because cocoa prices have spiked to an all-time high. You can learn all about it in the new Netflix crime drama, Narcocos. But the biggest candy news this holiday is that Sweethearts is updating its famous Valentine's Conversation Heart candy. Fingers crossed they finally found the perfect ratio of chalk to baby powder. The actual change is to the text of the candy. Sweethearts will now offer special hearts with messages for people who are in situationships. Now, if you're not sure if your relationship is a situationship, it's a situationship. Or if you add a third person, a menage a whatevs. The new situationship candy hearts look like this, with the tagline, "Messages as blurry as your relationship." First of all, blurry text is a cop-out. They're clearly trying to unload all their misprints. Second, there are plenty of messages that could accurately describe your situationship, like, "Miss you when drunk." "We're bored and both home for the holidays," and "I will never know your middle name." We got a great show for you tonight. My guests are Matt Damon and Ghost Danielle Pinnock. And when we come back, Space News. Stick around.
Well, friends, now that a D.C. appeals court has ruled unanimously that Donald Trump is not above the law, Donald Trump is not a king, Donald Trump can be prosecuted for the crimes he committed while in office, we still have one justice hurdle ahead of us, the Supreme Court. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, we are this close to having Donald Trump's federal prosecution in Washington, D.C. back on the trial track. That's his case for trying to unlawfully and unconstitutionally overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. The trial has been on hold while Donald Trump made this asinine claim, this unsupportable claim that he's above the law, beyond the reach of the courts or the criminal statutes, that he has absolute immunity against prosecution, meaning he can commit all the crimes he wants against the people of the United States, and he can't be held accountable. He can't be prosecuted for it. Well, you know that the appeals court in D.C. unanimously just shut that down. And we're this close to getting the trial back on track. Now it's up to the Supreme Court. Let's talk about why the Supreme Court has absolutely no reason, no legitimate reason to grab hold of that case, accept it for review, and then make us all play the waiting game for weeks, perhaps months, before Donald Trump's case gets put back on the trial track. Before we turn to why the Supreme Court has no legitimate reason to review the case, let's start with the new reporting. This from the New York Times. Headline: Federal Appeals Court rejects Trump's claim of absolute immunity. And that article begins, a federal appeals court on Tuesday rejected former President Donald Trump's claim that he was immune from prosecution on charges of plotting to subvert the results of the 2020 election, ruling that he must go to trial on a criminal indictment accusing him of seeking to overturn his loss to President Biden. The unanimous ruling by a 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit handed Mr. Trump a significant defeat. And friends, now I'm going to skip ahead in the article because here's what I want to focus on. In another significant part of their decision, the 3 appellate judges also circumscribed Mr. Trump's ability to use further appeals to waste more time and delay the election case from going to trial, a strategy the former president has pursued since the indictment against him was filed in August in federal district court in Washington. The panel said that Mr. Trump had until Monday to ask the Supreme Court to get involved in the case and continue a stay, that is a pause, of all the underlying proceedings. The case was initially put on hold by the trial judge in December. That was because Trump had appealed this absolute immunity issue, and so that meant everything in the trial court had to come to a screeching halt, had to stop. The article continues, but the panel imposed a rule designed to discourage Mr. Trump from making an intermediate challenge to the full Court of Appeals. It said that if Mr. Trump instead took that route, trial preparations could begin again after February 12. If the question does reach the Supreme Court, the justices will first have to decide whether to accept the case or to reject it and allow the appeals court ruling against Mr. Trump to stand. If they decline to hear the issue, the case would be sent directly back to the trial judge, Tanya Chutkan. She scrapped her initial March 4 date for the trial last week, but has otherwise shown every sign of wanting to move the charges toward trial as quickly as possible. If, however, the Supreme Court does accept the case, the crucial question will become how quickly the justices act in asking for briefs and in scheduling arguments. Should they move rapidly to hear the case and issue a decision, there remains the chance that a trial on the election charges will occur before the general election in November, but if the justices take their time, it's possible a trial could be delayed until after the election. If that were to happen, and Mr. Trump were to win, he would be in a position to ask his Justice Department, his weaponized Justice Department, to dismiss the case or even seek to pardon himself. So yes, that last little bit there sets out the parade of horribles that not only could but very likely would occur if Donald Trump is not taken to trial before the 2024 presidential election. And if the Supreme Court decides to grab hold of this absolute immunity issue and take it on appeal, take it for review, boy, the prospects of getting Trump to trial in his D.C. federal prosecution before the 2024 election, the prospects grow a little dim. But here's why the Supreme Court has absolutely no legitimate reason to accept the case for review and slow down the Donald Trump train in the direction of a trial. The appellate court essentially used the very words of the Constitution, the language of the Constitution, to reject Donald Trump's absurd notion that a president can't be prosecuted for crimes he commits while in office. Let me give you two examples. The appellate court opinion sets out that the president has a constitutional duty, a duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That's a presidential responsibility that is expressly set out in the Constitution. In what world, in what rational understanding of the English language does the constitutional duty to faithfully execute the laws of the country somehow, in those words, bestow upon a president the right, the authority to violate the laws of the country? That makes no damn sense. Indeed, the notion that he has an absolute right with impunity and immunity to violate the laws of the country that he is obliged to faithfully execute, it just runs contrary to the express words, the language of the Constitution. Let me give you another example. The impeachment judgment clause, and this is mind-blowing, right? Anybody with sort of a third grade understanding of grammar and of the English language would reach but one conclusion. The impeachment judgment clause says, and I'm just going to break it down in layman's terms, even if a president is impeached, even if the House of Representatives impeaches the president, then takes that article of impeachment, gives it to the Senate, and the Senate conducts a trial on the article of impeachment and convicts a president and removes him from office. Even if a president is impeached, that president shall still be liable for indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment, even if he is impeached. In other words, even if a president is impeached, he can still be prosecuted. By the very language of the impeachment judgment clause, presidents can be prosecuted. Not only can they be prosecuted, they can be prosecuted even after they are successfully impeached and removed from office for the very same conduct. That language in the Constitution, those words, the impeachment judgment clause, is actually a constitutional declaration of a president's susceptibility to prosecution. You could explain that to a third grader and they would get it. Apparently, Trump's lawyers must think or hope that the judges and justices who have to rule on his absolute immunity claim never made it out of the second grade, because the express language of the Constitution screams a president can be prosecuted. So that's why I say, friends, the Supreme Court has absolutely no legitimate reason to grab hold of this issue, to grab hold of this case, and then to do nothing but waste the time of we the people as we wait for our day in court, as we wait for justice to come for the crimes Donald Trump committed on and around January 6th against we the people, robbing us of our vote, right? Disregarding the expressed will of the American voters and deciding he would unlawfully and unconstitutionally retain the power of the presidency. Because the Supreme Court does not have to accept a case for review simply to say to the lower appellate court, we agree. We agree. They don't have to take a case for review if they agree with the result that came out of the Court of Appeals, which they have to if they bother reading and applying the plain language of the Constitution. So the only reason, in my opinion, that the Supreme Court would accept review of this case and just stop Donald Trump's trial dead in its tracks for goodness knows how long, is to do a favor for Donald Trump, though, right? Slow everything down so he could perhaps retake the reins of presidential power in the horrific event he ends up being the Republican nominee. There's no legitimate reason. There's no constitutional reason. There's no rational reason. There's no non-nefarious reason the Supreme Court would want to stop Donald Trump's trials dead in its tracks. He doesn't have presidential immunity. The courts ruled that he doesn't have presidential immunity. The Constitution makes clear that a president is not immune from prosecution for his crimes. So the Supreme Court should leave its damn hands off of this case, because I'll say it one more time, there's no legitimate reason for them to take it up and put a stop to the trial of Donald Trump. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow. You describe in the book one big break in the case. Yep. And let me read the sentence and then have you explain exactly what that big break is. But the sentence is too good not to read. You say that we just broken the case wide open, all because of Donald Trump being a cheap, predatory asshole who doesn't pay his bills. How is it that those tendencies in Donald Trump gave you guys the big break in the case?
He doesn't pay his vendors. And we're not just talking about like, okay, his bank loans or whatever, where, you know, if a bank gives a loan, there's always a possibility that the business will go under and not be able to repay the loan. That's part of the risk the bank takes on. If you're providing carpet for the business, yeah, it could go under, but you're expecting that you delivered the carpet and installed it. You're expecting that you're going to get paid. Trump, when he shuts down a business, even though he owns it, and it's through, and with the Trump organization and the money that it has, rather than say, okay, we're going to pay off all of the existing bills and then we're going to shut the lights off, he just stops paying for everything and shuts the lights off. He fires everybody, and then any existing bills that are still outstanding at that point, he just refuses to pay them, or he'll pay them like 30 cents on the dollar. And that's a common, really shady business practice that's incredibly predatory, especially to small businesses. All the talk about him being a champion for the common people is complete and utter bullshit, because every time that he has had the opportunity to do right by a lot of folks or not, he has chosen to screw them over and over and over again, and he's been doing it for decades. But this is also one of his weaknesses because it means that he makes a lot of enemies. And if you can tap into that dynamic, it can really, really help. So what happened here was that the very vendor that had done the transcriptions of the tapes, they were probably audio files, but you know what I mean. We like saying tapes still. There were tapes from Trump University